Alright, this is my last connection under the hood. I look forward to doing this one after connecting that pin in the next siren. This engine bay is not siren friendly. On second thought, maybe I should have just connected it with 2 wire ties. Make my life a little easier. So this gray wire for my alarm system is for my hood pin, as I mentioned. I'm not going to use a hood pin because I hate pin switches. They're mechanical in nature. And I'm actually going to show you the difference of a pin switch and a mercury switch, and I'll show you why one is so much vastly superior than the other. And that's my opinion. Of course, everything that I say is only my opinion. But then again, my opinion is the only one that ever. This is the reason why I really can't stand pin switches. Number one, they're really obtrusive. I mean, you have to mount this thing someplace into your hood, like say over here, make a bracket, you know, and since it's metallic in nature, it will rust, it can corrode, things could happen, the connector can rust off, it can just snap off. I've seen people just unplug them for no reason. This one here with the rubber plunger is a little bit better by means that it's adjustable in some respects. It's a little bit more nicer, and this is less prone to rusting, so it is a step better than the junk that they give you for free, but still, it's nothing compared to what I'm going to use here today. This here is a mercury switch. There is no parts in here that can get broken. It's very straightforward. You can mount it right up here under the hood. It'll never be seen. It's always out of the way, and they last forever. So really, what would you rather have? So as I said, there is a lock washer in there, and that lock washer's job is to keep this in position. What I did is I'm coming back because the self-tapping screw that I had put on there into the sheet metal, it wasn't quite as good as I wanted it to be, and like a dummy I forgot to put the ring terminal on for the ground for the mercury switch. So I opted to actually take double lock washers. I put a big one in the back, one in the front, in between the screw and this ring terminal that I installed. And this screw is just a little bit more beefy. The threads on it are a little bit more coarse. So I feel a lot more secure that this is going to actually stay put. And it's very important that these stay put. It's critical. So there you go. Okay, so with our new and improved screw and double lock washers, you can see that this thing is on there really well. I'm going to adjust it lightly by hand, and we're going to test it with the hood actually opening and closing. And also keep in mind that whenever you do install a mercury switch such as this one, if you live like in California or in San Francisco where you live on a hill, or if you're in some very hilly mountainous type of area, be extra careful. In some cases you might not actually even be a candidate to utilize a mercury switch, just because of, you know, how you might have to park your car in an incline. You might not actually be able to actually adjust this properly in the first place. So keep that in mind. But if you're in a normal situation, that may not apply to most people. But in some cases, people go ahead and buy mercury switches, and then they realize later on that they can't even use them for what they're designed for. And that is the reason why. And the same thing goes for tilt switches. You know, toe sensors, things like that. Same kind of principle works with those as well. So this is the last of the 3 connections under the hood. Once this is done and loomed up, then we're going to move along to the back. We're going to connect the rear trip with the trunk trigger, because this vehicle has a light with a 2-wire, which is grounded through the trunk latch switch, which I'll show you. So we'll have to connect that and run that up to under the dash. So there you have it. Just loom these, tie it all up. Now, since this wire here is going to move a little bit, I'm going to mandatorily put a couple pieces of tape down the midway of this loom, just as a precaution. And right here, where I have my cumulative amount of looms that are coming through my firewall, one from my tack, my siren, and my mercury switch, I'm going to loom all 3 of these up together, just like so. Make sure that it's not in any way, it's not affecting anything, any performance of any part of the vehicle. not obstructing any kind of cables or moving mechanical parts under this hood whatsoever. And once you're sure of that, you can move ahead. That on the test light is showing a green ground on this one wire when the trunk is open. Now I'm going to close the trunk and see what happens. Okay, so I'm just going to grab onto this wire. And I want to have to just tape this on. I'm going to run it through this factory amp wire, loom it up, come down the corner and up to the front area where we're going to do the bulk of our work on this system. And that's where we're going to wind up. If you need a piece of wire, I'd suggest, if you're using like a car like this, a sedan, maybe about 12 feet or so will do you. But if you have a larger vehicle, you might want to get as much as 15 or 20 feet, just so that way you have enough to run it up. And be very careful that when you do this, that you put a little pre-thought of how it's going to wind up coming out. You don't want to put your wire behind where it's going to get squished up on the light, because if this thing gets grounded onto the chassis and you close your trunk, your light will stay on forever. You'll never even know the difference. Then you wonder, why do I have that battery? Here's the wire I just connected from my trunk light. I ran it out over here. I actually pulled it out. There's two terminals here that I can pull down my factory amp, so I ran them on between, underneath there, over to my speaker, started up a loom, made a little P-tie over here where I found the hole, and this I'm going to run down through the carpet and up along the side panel to the front of the vehicle. So this here is the wire I ran from my trunk, my rear trip. The wire color I chose was black for obvious reasons. This car is about as black as Africa at night. So I'm going to run this up front, and I'm going to tie this into, because since this is a two-way alarm remote start system, on my LCD remote control, it only shows hood and trunk as a combination on the LCD panel. So I will choose, I should say, to connect my hood and my trunk onto that dedicated input, and my door triggers will show up separately. Shock sensor, motion sensor, everything will show up separately the way I think that it should be, and I think that's the way that the user is going to understand it best. So again, pre-thought, pre-planning, you'll have a better successful installation at the end of the day. And it's so much easier to do things right the first time than to do it wrong many times over and over again. Take it from me, I've been there. So anyway, wire from the back. I ran it through all my panels. I am not utilizing any type of upholstery tools. However, I do have many. This car doesn't really warrant any. Hook tool works wonderful. Just make sure you route it away from anything else. If there's a factory harness, by all means, attach onto it, tape it, as I'm a big fan of definitely doing that. If you have clips like this one we have right here, use those to your advantage. In this case, I actually might choose to actually use an upholstery tool, unless I can make it work with this, which by the time I get the tool, will be done with this way, so I'll just do it this way. There is this little push clip in here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around it, because it guarantees this wire will never pop out, and it's the safest way to run a wire. And you can see once I'm getting up front, I'm starting to find factory harnesses. Stay with all those harnesses. And here again is another one of those little clips. And I'm just going to go around that. The best way to work on any car is to treat the car as if you were never there. And that right there is what I've just done. So I'm going to run this up and out, and that's going to basically just lay right here, where again I'm going to do all the bulk of my installation, my wiring right here underneath the driver's dash. So now I'll show you how to pull down this driver's dash and how to actually get started doing all the main connections.